happy to have people that, of course, we encounter during our trips around Europe, around the world, when we visit places that are changing. And the next guest was actually met for the first time during a meeting of Open House worldwide. Most of you know that some of us are already also involved in Open House Torino. And the Open House worldwide meeting was held for the first time 4 years ago in London. And the next guest delivered a fantastic, inspirational speech back then. So it's been 4 years that we tried to have him here. This here was possible. So we're very happy to welcome on stage Richard Upton.
Woo! The London visionary. The stage is yours.
Thank you for being with us, Richard.
That was an unreasonable introduction. Hey, buonasera a tutti. I need a table. Luca, placemaking. Setting the table. I always carry around some merch. I like some merch, you know. So if we have some questions, we have some merch at the end if they're any good. But I would like you all to look at that bag and imagine it's a box. Specifically, Pandora's box. Do you remember the story of Pandora's box in Greek mythology? Okay, I'll remind you. So 700 BC, Zeus gives Pandora a wedding present, which was very nice. And Pandora opens the box lid, and all the evils of the world come out. You'll remember the story. There's crime, social inequality, climate change, famine, wars. So Pandora puts the lid back on as quickly as she can, and one thing remains in the box. Do you remember what remains in the box? Hope. Brilliant. So this is a talk about hope, and it remains in that box. So are you bothered? Well, you better be, because you're the most important people on the planet. You really are. The built environment professionals are the most important people on the planet. Shall I tell you why? The built environment, of course, has the most significant impact on the planet. More than any other industry, the built environment has the most important impact on the planet. It contributes, as the last speaker was talking about, significant issues for global warming. In fact, it's more than 40% of all emissions come from the built environment. That leads to global warming, and as we've just been learning, that creates an incredible problem. The past 9 years, as was said, are the warmest on record. 2023, this year, will beat the record set in 2016. 2024 is expected to be even warmer still. The safety limit is 350 parts per million CO2 atmospheric pressure. We've breached 400. Houston, we have a significant problem. The annual sea level rise over the last 20 years has been roughly twice the average speed of the preceding 80 years. We're currently using 1.7 Earths of renewable resource. That's currently. And by 2050, we need 3 Earths. But you know what? According to most experts at the UN and elsewhere, this is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is this. It's the widening gap between the rich and the poor. It's social and economic inequality. And wealth from development, of course, is concentrated in a very few number of investors' hands. And development through gentrification that is rife, sadly, exacerbates a divided society. And it's happening every single day right in front of us, and some people in this room are contributing to that. That drives social and economic inequality. That is driving great unrest. You shouldn't take my word for it. This has been brewing for longer than climate change. 114 years ago, this man, Winston Churchill, I'll try and give his voice now, this is what he said in 1909. The greatest danger to the British Empire and to the British people is not to be found amongst the enormous fleets and armies of the European continent. That's you, I guess. Nor in the solemn problems of Hindustan, nor any danger in the wide circuit of colonial and foreign affairs. No, it's here in our midst, close at home, close at hand, in the vast growing cities of England and Scotland, and in the dwindling and cramped villages of our denuded countryside. It is there you will find the seeds of imperial ruin and national decay, the unnatural gap between rich and poor. And that was 114 years ago. Man, have we got a problem now. Now, the cost of failure is extreme. So, mental health issues growing at an alarming rate. In 2020, more than 1 billion people, according to the World Health Organization, were suffering with a mental health issue. 15% of all adolescents on the planet today are said to have a mental health issue. 1 in 100 deaths is by suicide. 58% of them are under the age of 50. Most of them are men. The cost to the UK economy alone from mental health issues is between 80 and 100 billion pounds a year, which is 5% of the UK GDP. And add to that the impact of poor environmental management flashed across your TV screens all last year and well before, awful floods and widespread wildfires. I probably put the wrong title on this slide. In a way, I think it should say that poor urban design is an act of great irresponsibility. It's finally being understood with empirical data that poorly designed buildings and towns and cities contribute to health, wealth inequality, crime, and societal decay. Poorly designed buildings, and by that I also include boring buildings that lack complexity, lack humanity, lack beauty, they're also likely to be more likely to be demolished sooner. Do you know that in the US alone, there's 1 billion square feet, I still work in Imperial, sorry, I'm really old. 1 billion square feet is demolished every single year. And almost all of those buildings are less than 50 years old, which is a crime. That's half the built mass of Washington. So for the good health, the distributed wealth of the planet, we need to regenerate with beautiful buildings as well that last for hundreds of years, not just a few decades. Don't take my word for it again. Listen to Thomas Heatherwick in the UK. He is a genius talent. He's on a crusade to stop boring buildings being built, and read his friend Alexander Coburn's paper on neuroaesthetic research. So, you are the most important people on the planet. I'm going to repeat it. You are the most important people on the planet because you can change all of this. 1 hectare at a time. Don't wait for the politicians. Start with your own projects. Purpose-led regeneration can provide the opportunity, it can provide the conditions to put all of those issues back in that box. From carbon emissions to environmental management to health and social inequality. More than any other industry on the planet, we can make a difference. So there's hope in that box. So my name's Richard Upton. I have had 35 years experience in regeneration. I feel privileged to have had a free education. I grew up in a council estate and affordable housing in East and South East London. I was lucky enough to scrape the grades to get into one of the best real estate courses in the UK, if not the world. I learned a lot, and I've made a shed load of mistakes. And yet, no one, absolutely no one, at university or in the field of practice teaches you what the point of it all is. No one teaches you what the purpose of regeneration is. It's not on the curriculum at Reading, where I studied. It's not on the curriculum at Harvard. It's not on the curriculum at Cambridge. It does exist in some silos on sustainable economics and architecture, but not in teaching developers, protagonists in real estate. It's just not on the curriculum. So that's my mission now as a grumpy old man with a cold, to infect the property industry with some passion, with some purpose, so we can perhaps change the world 1 hectare at a time to make a better, more thoughtful, sustainable and inclusive place. To show what the purpose of regeneration is and what huge impact it can make to overcome those issues I talked about earlier. So I'm going back to school. Alongside investing in social impact projects and owning and running a community pub in southern England, I'm going back to university, I'm going back to school to teach undergraduates and master's graduates what is the purpose of regeneration. Supporting the most disadvantaged and the least represented in the industry with fully paid bursaries. I am clear that we need more grit in our industry and we certainly need better diversity. I'm hoping to inspire a new generation to approach regeneration with distinct purpose. Also championing heritage and social inclusion. I'm a Commissioner of Historic England. I'm one of 16 commissioners appointed by the Secretary of State to look after the heritage of our country, of England. There's a spoiler alert here. I think heritage is one of the special sources in great regeneration projects. More of that later. And lastly, as I said, I'm investing in social impact projects. Otherwise, I'm just a grumpy old man talking about the past. So I need proof points, I need case studies, I need evidence, I need to put my money where my mouth is. So, let's step back. What is the purpose of regeneration? The dictionary definition is super clear. It's the physical and spiritual renewal or rebirth of somewhere. The physical and spiritual renewal of somewhere. So if you wouldn't mind, on Monday when you go back to your desks and think about your projects, can you just question whether the purpose is right and whether it's physical and spiritual renewal? So in my view, we're all farmers. That's how I see my role. And upon acquiring a piece of land, you should not bleach it. You should replenish its nutrients. You shouldn't fill it with contaminants. You shouldn't grab something for the short term. It's for the long term. It's a long-term legacy. The property industry, of course, on average, treats things differently. And that's something we need to change. Universally, we need to change the culture of the property development industry, and we must change it universally. Now, there are some exceptions. The social hub are in the room. There's an exception, but most developers I've met in 35 years, and I've met some of the best in Europe, approach a bit of land that they've bought, and they say, look at what I own. How many units can I get on there? How many bedrooms can I get on there? How many square meters can I get on there? And they hand that brief to an army of consultants who fire up their laptops to try and optimize the internal rate of return, the IRR, which is frankly irresponsible. It's the external rate of return that is the point. That's the whole inspiration, is to make a difference to the planet. Our opportunity here is to create transformational change, substantially reducing those emissions, driving social cohesion, an opportunity for all, delivering huge improvements in well-being and mental health. We can do all of this as an industry with each of our projects, and along the way we can make some really nice places and really nice spaces. Our responsibility is not to rape and pillage. Perhaps here is our Me Too moment. Here's a nice controversial statement from a developer. I agree with Joseph Proudhon, the philosopher in 1840. He exclaimed, "Property is theft." He also was the first person to describe themselves as an anarchist. So I'm going to encourage you all to be anarchists. In my view, in order to optimize the opportunity to save the planet and to renew it physically, spiritually, and sustainably, we should adopt this philosophy. When we buy a piece of land, we might say, perhaps shout out loud, look at what I have, an opportunity to curate this piece of land for future generations. And then we should research, very importantly, what the social and economic issues are in that area and know it more than anyone else on the planet. And we should also research the history, the deep, deep history of people in that place and the buildings and the people and the stories of that place. So next, I guess there'll be some cynics in the room. There'll probably be some of the developers, I guess. You'll be saying, look, my project's difficult enough. You know, don't load all this on my shoulders as well. How does all this make money? It must be far too difficult. But look, trust me, it does make money. I've made a decent career out of focusing on purpose-led regeneration. I've built cool cafes. I don't call meanwhile. I think that sounds like you're going to throw it away. Worthwhile. My team call it worthwhile. We built cafes in 3 weeks before the Olympics. This one, we bought a site, wanted to care for it for generations. So we built this in 3 weeks to activate and engage with people. I've built community hubs, clubs. I put a 6-meter high Nipper the dog back into the old vinyl factory on a development that I have near Heathrow in London. 8,000 student bedrooms, thousands and thousands of homes, more cool cafes in train carriages, activating things straight away. Libraries, where local authorities have run out of money. They didn't have any money to build a library, so it was paid for with the residential above. But it's not just any library. Our brief was to inspire young people in a disadvantaged area to self-improve. So they need a cathedral of a library. And so that was the brief we gave ourselves, not the council. Here was the library, won all sorts of awards, amazing thing, cost the council absolutely nothing, and they got a profit share. I built public parks, live music venues, millions of square feet of offices, fire stations. I set up my first business in 1991. I was 23, developed student accommodation and social housing with a really forward-thinking model that was decade or so ahead of its time. That was sold for millions in 2002. I innovated then in primary healthcare. This was really interesting. I created a model in primary healthcare building super doctor surgeries in the most deprived, health-deprived areas. And what we did was we capitalized the right to receive prescriptions, the ticket to get medicine, and we used that to create a discounted rent for the NHS. So we used the model of buying land in poor areas and creating a health inequality to create a discount in the development model so we could create much more beautiful doctor surgeries. It was clever, and it also made money. We sold that business for tens of millions in 2005. And then I was able to focus on my real passion, which was mixed-use regeneration. And that company was called Cathedral, and that company then grew and was sold to a PLC for tens of millions in 2014. We repositioned and rebranded that PLC, a stock market quoted regeneration leader in purpose-led regeneration. We called it U&I. And then Land Securities, which is the biggest commercial property company in the UK, swooped to buy it, and it's public knowledge, for 190 million in 2021. They paid a huge premium for the right to buy U&I. We were trading at 82 pence a share. And they bought it for £1.49. Do you know why? Well, the CEO is really, really astute. He knows that the future of real estate is in purpose-led regeneration. The S in ESG responds to demand from investors, young Generation Z investors. They want to know that they're investing in impact and purpose. And governments, they all want a social return, and we should drive a social return. So put simply, a societal approach is key to business survival as well. And again, don't take my word for it. I think there were a load of other pretty pictures there, some nice houses, and a great scheme in Brighton. But don't take my word for it. This is what Larry Fink said, the CEO of the largest investment company on the planet. He said that society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show it makes a positive contribution to society. He's a pretty serious-looking dude, but he looks after $9.42 trillion. So he knows a thing or two. Now, I can't finish this talk without some special sauce and a bit of a case study. So special sauces, in my view, to great regeneration projects. Heritage, art, and an immediate start. Heritage, art, and an immediate start. Heritage. Know more about the history of the land that you're looking after than anyone else on the planet. more about it. Not just the history of the buildings, but the history of land and the stories of people on that place. There is rich, rich inspiration in those stories of place. That drives authenticity, it drives belonging, it drives identity, it drives distinctiveness, and it drives value too. Try not to knock down any buildings if you can. Any buildings if you can. Layer them in for many reasons, including efficiency and carbon efficiency. Heritage. Heritage, art, and an immediate start. So art, okay? In my view, infuse everything with art and artists. Absolutely everything. Expands minds, drives creativity, drives innovation, leverages positive mental health, well-being, again, belonging and identity. These things deliver social cohesion. These things deliver happiness. Heritage, art, and an immediate start. So immediate start. Don't hoard the site, Charlie. Rip the hoarding down. Don't keep people out. Bring them in. Tear down the hoarding. Create something worthwhile, not meanwhile. Don't throw it away. Plant seeds. Let them grow. Meet your neighbors. Start to repair what's broken. Engage. Inspire. Provide experience. Provide opportunity. Remember, property is theft. We don't own that land. You don't own it. Share it, build it, trust. It manages risk, it manages your planning process, it builds collaboration, it builds trust, and it creates immediate social and economic impact, which is our responsibility. So, lastly, a little case study to illustrate what I've talked about in action. It was one of the last projects I worked on with the PLC. We had many, many projects, but this one had a vision of huge regeneration, huge purpose-led regeneration, probably one of the finest regeneration projects in the UK, but I'm a bit biased. Here it is. It's 24 acres or 10 hectares in your maths, right next to Piccadilly Station in Manchester, and it's about 1.6 billion of pounds of gross development value. Much more importantly, it's designed to optimize social and economic impact. So it produces 840 million of social and economic impact every year forever. So forget the gross development value, it's a small number. You know, it's the impact that's the legacy. So the brief was to knock down all the buildings from the Sir Howard Bernstein and the government. We ignored that. And the brief was to start with a big first phase of residential. We ignored that. We built the park first, because this city has so few parks. So we built the park first because there's health and well-being issues in this city ad nauseum. So we built the park first, £23 million worth of park before any buildings were built. And it is a stunning park. It's not a CGI. We reused materials from the ground. We ripped off the culverted river. It had been closed for 50 years with concrete over the top. We created a floodplain to deal with the flood issues within the park. You can put your toe in the water, which is rare in Manchester. And we created fun, slides that go over the river. You've got to have fun in every project as well. So we built the park first, and now with their balance sheet, Land Securities are building a 300 million first phase. And then, against the wishes of our public sector partners, in that depot we kept the buildings, because they're cool. Top right and bottom two, we built this worthwhile activity. It's quite a big one. And we called it Escape to Freight Island. And it serves 3,000 meals and drinks every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then top left, we created in the rest of the space a theatre of all sorts of stuff, including a club. It's got a capacity of 15,000. This is the pop-up. It produces the worthwhile, as I call it. It produces 11 million of gross value added and discounted ticketing for the disadvantaged communities in that area. And so 1 million visitors, one of the biggest attractions in Manchester, and it's the worthwhile activity. Then we heard a developer wanted to buy this grotty little pub, but a cool little building on the northern side of our site, and knock it down and build a block of flats. And the council were entertaining that. We couldn't let that happen. It's a gritty little live music venue where the Smiths played and people pogo in a sweaty, grimy interior. So we bought it really, really quickly. And then we leased it back to Andy, the tenant, at the same level of rent. And my point here is it takes grit to make a pearl of a place and to maintain authenticity. Keep the grit. So anyway, the last thing we did was, just before we started talking about the buildings to the general public, the government wanted us to show master plans of buildings and whatever, and again, we ignored that. We wanted to show what the inspiration is in the soil of place, what the power of this place is. Let's plow it up and inspire our teams really early. This is not just some piece of bullshit marketing collateral at the end of a project. This was at the beginning of the project. So I commissioned a poet, our kid. We made a film. It went viral. He sang it out at a Manchester United game. Here's the film.
Clouds burst in the grey slate skies. Creativity reigns. Possibilities pour over the population of this united city that has so much to answer for. Manchester's sprawling. A haven for heathens, hoodies and hipsters, hijabis and Hebrews, highbrow intellectuals and however you sexuals, it's home for all. And all's welcome in this migrants' melting pot where every smell, sound and taste is on tap. From Jamaican jerk to gourmet chip bars. We do things differently. We do it with rebellious charm, radical courage, riotous class, an illustrious future built on an industrious past. Welcome to Manchester, catalyst capital of Earth, where brains meet balls to birth world firsts. Cotton mills, canal boats, Peterloo, Ancoats, L.S. Lowry and steam trains, bouncing bombs, burning bras, Henry Royce, Pankhurst and Marx paved the Mancunian way. Now, miraculous medicinal machines, music, art and graphene break new ground today. For innovation, audacity and imagination is the makeup of our DNA. And tomorrow? Who knows, but as the saying goes, history likes to repeat herself. So in the future, who'd be anywhere else than here? Where everyone has the power of possibility, where ideas and ambitions are probability, where things get done for others to follow, where opportunities flow and communities grow. Defiantly Mancunian, globe defining. Definitely Mayfield.
Clap, but thank you for that. My plan is to create an army, but that sounds a bit aggressive. Maybe a cult of anarchists, like dear old Proudhon. I reckon I can fund 20 or 30 bursaries or so, mentor some of those. If I can inspire 25% of all I teach, that's another 400. If 50 of you go away with a slightly changed mind, we've got 550. So we can march forward with a cult of anarchists for purpose-led regeneration, and we can deliver. And you've got the skills to deliver, which is incredible. So let's get serious. You're the most important people on the planet. Please wear that responsibility properly every single day and inspire your teams to make this world a better place immediately. There is hope, and it's in your hands. Thank you.